Welcome to West Houston's weekly devotional. Each week is an opportunity for us to seek out how we can grow our hearts for Jesus, His people, and His world. This week's devotional comes from Hebrews chapter 11, verses 1 through 3. If you watch the Olympics, and honestly, even if you don't, you still have probably heard of the name Michael Phelps. Now retired, he was a swimmer for the United States and is still currently the most decorated Olympian of all time with an astonishing 28 medals. It's been said that Phelps' body was practically custom made for swimming. He's 6'4" with the wingspan of somebody who's around 6'8", with legs for somebody who's around 5'8". All of these things combined allow Phelps to swim faster than anyone his size with less resistance than anyone his size. But perhaps one of the most impressive victories for him came in 2008 when Phelps won his 8th gold medal in the 200-meter butterfly, setting the record for the most amount of gold medals won by a single individual. The reason why this particular medal was so impressive is because he basically won the race blind. In an interview a few years after the event, Phelps recounted that when he dove into his waters, the goggles that he was wearing started filling up with water. And before he even swam 25 meters, he basically couldn't even open his eyes. So what did he do? He said that he went back to his training. He knew exactly how many strokes he needed to take for each lap. He knew that he would have to turn around and touch the wall at a certain point, and he knew exactly how many strokes he would have to do that in. And he knew how many strokes he would need to take his breaths in so that he was able to perfectly run the race without even being able to see. Mentally, he knew exactly what he needed to do because he trained for it. For us, we look at Hebrews 11, chapters 1 and 3 for the same idea. It reads, "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. For by it the people of old received their commendation. By faith, we understand that the universe was created by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things that are visible." See, many people look to this verse as a reference for why we should have faith when we don't see everything that's there. Some people kind of call this like a blind faith. But that's not what the author intended. The author just explained in the previous chapter why our new covenant of faith in Jesus was so much better than the old covenant that relied on works and sacrifices. He had just gone over all kinds of evidence why our faith in Jesus was so much better. This isn't a blind faith that we have. Our salvation or our hope is assured or convicted in our faith. For by faith, the people of the Old Testament were praised, and it is by faith that we recognize that this entire world was created simply when God spoke things into existence. All of these are examples showing us that our faith isn't blind, that it has a history, that it has a God who has been trustworthy. And because our God has been trustworthy in the past, we know that God will continue to be trustworthy in the future. See, just like Michael Phelps, he went back to his training and counted his strokes to know exactly what to do in the race. We can go back and we can see God's faithfulness throughout all the ages and know that God will continue to be faithful today. That's what Abram did in our last message last week. He saw how God had been faithful to him during his time in Egypt, and he knew that God would be faithful to him again as he went to war with 4 kings. And so my challenge for you this week is to go out and journal. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. Maybe you just write down one thing that you're grateful for, one thing where you saw God be faithful for you today. Because the best way that you can see God's faithfulness tomorrow in our lives is to continue to write it down before we lose track of it, before we forget about it. Because when life has you blinded, when you can't see the hope that you have in front of you, you can turn in your journal and you can rely on the training. You can see where God has been faithful in your life before and know that God will be faithful to you again. Thanks for listening to West Houston's weekly devotional. If you know somebody who'd be encouraged by this devotion, please feel free to share it with them. And if you'd like to join us for worship, we meet every Sunday at 10 a.m. You can find us and more information at our website, em.westhoustonvbc.org. Or you can find that link in the show notes below. We hope to see you this upcoming Sunday. God bless.